And today we're going to talk a little bit about how loan officers get paid and how commissions work. So, in the mortgage industry, loan officers are paid based upon the loan amount. So, a lot of people are familiar with the real estate industry and how realtors typically would get 3% of the home purchase price, right? The buying agent would typically get 3%, and the selling agent would typically get 3% of the purchase price. Now that's changing a lot actually, but that's still, typically the standard. A loan officer, however, gets paid based on the loan amount. So even though they may be purchasing the house for 500,000, the loan is only 400,000 because they're putting 20% down. And so the loan officer is getting paid based on the loan amount. Now, while real estate brokerages typically collect 3% for their side of the transaction, mortgage brokerages and lenders typically collect 2.75% of the loan amount for the transaction. Now, this also varies because lenders can charge more, but in the brokered world, the max that you can charge is 2.75% margin, right? So that is kind of putting it in perspective for people who are brand new to the industry, understanding and being able to compare it to realtors. I find that it's easiest to compare it to realtors to understand. Yeah, realtors, the real estate brokerage usually gets 3% of the purchase price. The mortgage brokerage typically gets 2.75% of the loan amount. Now, there's a bunch of exceptions to that, and it totally depends on where you work. Now, beyond that, the mortgage company obviously has to make some of that 2.75%, just like the real estate company has to make some of that 3%. And so the split that you have with your mortgage broker or your real estate broker is going to change depending on what company that you're at. Now, at our company, on our team, we have some of the highest splits in the business, which is 2.2% of the loan amount, right? So if the company collects 2.75% of the loan amount, then you would make 2.2% of the loan amount as your compensation. And there's ways to even make more. So we have some of the best compensation in the industry, but that's how the compensation works. Now, what we call this in the mortgage industry is being paid according to basis points, right? A basis point is equal to 0.01% of, a loan, right? So 100 basis points is 1%. So 275 basis points is 2.75%. So when we're talking to loan officers about compensation, we're saying, yeah, we charge the client 275 basis points and you get paid 220 basis points. That's the situation at our company, right? The client is paying a 275 basis point margin and the loan officer is making 220 basis points or 2.2% of the loan amount. So a couple different ways to think about it there, but just understanding that as opposed to the actual purchase price of the transaction, the loan officers are always, like the realtors do, the loan officers are always getting paid based on the loan amount. It doesn't matter how much the house sold for, doesn't matter how much the house is worth when we're refinancing it. All that matters is how much was the actual loan amount that the bank lended out. We're going to get paid based on that. Now, again, typically, 275 basis points is the typical margin, but it can go way higher. If you're a lender, you're legally allowed to charge more. It could go way lower if you're trying to win deals or you're at some kind of low margin shop where it's just trying to bang out a bunch of deals at the lowest margin possible to try to beat everybody out on their rates. So this can vary a lot. But again, at our company, it's really one of the highest in the industries. We're charging the client 275 basis points margin, and we're making 220 basis points as the loan officer. So for example, on $1 million loan, which is pretty common nowadays in a major city, $1 million loan, your commission is $22,000 if you're on our team. So it's a little bit different than how the realtor commission works, but it's definitely similar. So that's how I like to compare it for people that are new to the industry. But as far as the lingo goes, basis points, 100 basis points is equal to 1%. So when we're throwing around, you get paid 220 basis points, we're talking about 2.2% of the loan amount. So again, $1 million loan, 22,000, maybe it's a $500,000 loan, $11,000 commission. So this is a great industry to be able to work in and make commission. Now, another great part about being a loan officer is that it's remote and that it's somewhat on your own schedule. Now, the reason why I say somewhat is because obviously you're a commission only and operating based on the sales, then if there's something going on with the sale, you kind of have to drop everything and make it happen, right? So you're on your own schedule, at least on our team, as far as you don't have to go into an office every day or have set hours. But obviously, the deals themselves kind of determine your schedule. So you have to be ready and available. And the great thing now is, you don't have to go to closings. Back in the past, it used to be a big thing of like you would probably only do deals in your state or your area, and you want to go to the closings and meet the people in person and all that. That's not necessary anymore, right? That's why I love being a loan officer more than being a realtor, is that you get your state license, so you can do loans in any part of your state. Now, when you're a realtor, you get your state license and you can do real estate in any part of your state, but you really can only do real estate in the markets where you're a part of that MLS and where you can physically go to these houses to show people. Well, as a loan officer, we can get our license. You get it in one state. You can do a loan at any place in the entire state, and everything is remote. You don't have to go anywhere and show houses. You don't have to, go to the closing physically, all these different things that realtors typically have to do. You don't have to do it. You don't have to go to walkthroughs, inspections, any of that stuff, appraisals. So it is a lot easier as a loan officer in those terms, but we have a much wider market because we get one state license. Now we can work that whole state without having to worry about if we're a member of a MLS there, or if we have access, or if we could make it there to show people the homes. And then also we can just easily get a license in another state and do the same thing in that state. So some of our loan officers are licensed in almost all 50 states. And so they have literally everyone in the country available to them that they could help out, as opposed to just the people living in their immediate area, which is what a realtor has to deal with. So from someone who owns a national lender and owns a real estate brokerage, I'm telling you, being a loan officer is a lot better than being a realtor. No offense to my realtors out there. And some people are amazing at it, and that's what they do best, and they like that the most. But in my opinion, being a loan officer is a lot easier, I would say. And it's not, don't think it's easy, but being a realtor is extremely difficult. And so I think being a loan officer is a little easier than being a realtor, especially in terms of the market that you're available to work. You're not stuck into this one market. You don't have these big MLS fees that you have to pay $1,000 a year is what it is in Miami. It's outrageous. So there's a lot of benefits, I think, of being a loan officer over being a realtor. But again, I've owned both companies. I've also, have my real estate license and mortgage license. And so I see both ends of it. And in my opinion, I feel like it's much more lucrative and a little bit lower barrier to entry to be a loan officer. And it's also a lot easier to work like online leads and stuff like that, because again, it's national, right? You don't have to own, as a realtor, you could work online leads, but only people in that certain area, right? And so it's really more about being out there in person and building relationships and stuff. But as a loan officer, you don't necessarily have to go do that in person, right? There's a huge opportunity as a loan officer. You could never go to any events in person and still be an extremely successful loan officer without going to any open houses, without going to events, without going to closings with your clients, without going anywhere. Just from your house, you could be quarterbacking dozens of loans per month. And some people do that. But obviously it's usually better to build relationships, especially with realtors. But that's how the commission works as far as loan officers go. We're paid based on the loan amount. 100 basis points is equal to 1%. We typically have a 275 basis point margin, which is, what the company is making. And then on our team, we pay out the loan officers 220 basis points, or 2.2% of the loan amount, which is some of the highest in the industry. Meaning you could make that whole 275 basis points. So, a lot of great ways to earn even more, at our company. And as far as volume goes, it really varies between loan officers and between companies, right? Some companies are high volume shops where they're just churning through people and they're giving them really low interest rates, but not that great of service. And so if they're making a small amount, right, they're not making 275 basis points on each loan. They might be making 150 basis points on each loan. So they're able to give the client a lower rate, but they're making a lot less. They're paying their loan officers a lot less and their staff. And they're obviously not, giving the same service as people like on our team do, where they're personal loan officer walking them through the whole transaction. They're just getting called by random people at this company that are hourly employees that are just pushing paperwork through, right? So it can vary from that all the way to people who are, like people on our team and people at our company that are top producers, which are people who are, charging a good margin, a regular margin, because they're providing the best service, right? And so it's going to depend and vary on the different companies, and vary from deal to deal, right? Sometimes you have to charge less margin, but industry standard 275 basis points margin, and here on our team we pay you out 220 basis points on that, which is 2.2% of the loan amount. So for everybody who's always asking me the questions about how loan officers get paid, that is, our pay structure. And here's the great part about being on our team is that payroll is every day. So you get paid the next day, which at some companies, it could take up to 6 weeks for you to get your commission. And here we pay you the next day. Payroll is ran every day. So that's absolutely amazing. I've never seen anything like that where a company is actually running payroll every single day. So as soon as you close your loan and the check comes in and the paperwork settled, boom, get paid the next day. Other companies, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, even up to 6 weeks. When I first got into the industry, I was at a bank where it was even more than 6 weeks, which is just outrageous. But here on our team, when you go to newmlo.com and sign up for our team, we get paid the next day. And sometimes if it's in the morning, if all your paperwork is in the morning, you can even get paid that same day because payrolls ran every day. So that's absolutely amazing. So that's how loan officers get paid out there in the world. Some might charge different margins and pay their loan officers different margins. Here on our team, we're typically going to charge 275 basis points margin, which is going to leave the loan officer with 220 basis points worth of commission. And the most beautiful part about it, payroll is ran every single day. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions here now. Remember, you can always send us questions. Send them to @KyleHershey or @the new MLO Show. You can go to newmlo.com to sign up as a loan officer. If you're already licensed and you just want to join a new team that provides you with leads and the best rates and pricing and hundreds of different outlets, you can go to newmlo.com and sign up to join our team. Or if you're not a licensed loan officer yet and you're looking to get licensed, you can actually do that at newmlo.com. We can walk you through the licensing process and bring you on board so you can start closing loans. So whether you're licensed or not, go to newmlo.com, newmlo.com, and we can bring you on board and start getting you closing some loans so you can start making that 2.2% of the loan amount commission on some deals. All right, so first question here. See, Alex is asking, how much does a loan officer typically make per loan? So that's really going to depend on the area you're doing loans at, right? So if you're in a state like Florida and you're getting a lot of deals in South Florida, then your loan amount's probably going to be pretty large, right? That's why I say like a typical market, any state that you're in that has a large city in it and you're doing deals in there, $1 million loan is not that uncommon anymore at all. I mean, a decent house in a major city is $1 million for a 2-3 bedroom, right? So $1 million loan, and you'd be making, on our team, you'd make 22,000 commission on that. And, then it depends on how many loans you do per month. But again, it's going to depend on the area. If you're only doing loans in like the middle of nowhere, Ohio, and every house is only $100,000, that's going to be a big difference, right? You'd have to do 10 loans to make the same amount that somebody would on $1 million loan. That's one of the things that is kind of an industry saying is it takes the same amount of work to close a $100,000 loan than it does $1 million loan, which is absolutely true, right? We get paid according to the loan amount. And so that's not to say to throw away $100,000 loans or don't help those clients out or pay attention to them. The point is just that, larger loans are obviously better and you can waste a lot of time trying. So the real thing is don't target low loan amounts, right? If you're sitting there targeting all day, only areas that have low loan amounts or targeting a certain type of client that keeps coming to you with only low loan amounts, you got to be careful about that because it'll take you the same amount of work to do that as it would have took you to close one that pays you 5 to 10 times the same amount. So how much loan officers make really depends. And just like realtors, loan officers are commission only typically, and it's all self-motivated. And at the end of the day, it's a sales job, just like being a realtor. And so just like realtors, the top, 10% of loan officers make 90% of the money, and the bottom 90% only do a deal when one of their family members needs a house sometimes, or does no deal at all, right? People get their license and then they don't continue to work. And a lot of the times they'll hit a wall and realize, hey, this is actually difficult. I thought this was going to be easy. I just get my license and then people would start coming to me when they need a refinance or whatever. Well, it's not that simple, right? We get paid so much money because it's a difficult job. And so how much you make is really going to depend on how much you do. Like any commission only job, like any sales job, it's just based on, are you taking it seriously? Are you doing it full time? Now, you can ask any full-time loan officer that's actually doing the job of a loan officer, working at a legitimate company, doing it legitimately full time. They're going to be making 6 figures plus. I mean, there's no way that you could be doing this full time for any extended period of time and not be making 6 figures. If you're not, then you're in the wrong business, right? Or you're doing something wrong, or you're not actually working full time. So the income is going to very much depend on the loan officer and what they are doing. And just like any other sales job, any other commission only job, it's just going to depend on how much work you're willing to put into it. All right, question here from Sarah. Is mortgage commission based on the loan amount or the interest rate? Yeah, so great question. We touched on this a little bit ago. So the commission is based on the loan amount, right? Now, the interest rate is going to vary depending on how much margin is being charged, right? So we're getting paid a percentage of the loan amount. Now, that percentage is going to change depending on how much margin we are charging the client, right? So if we're charging the client 2.75% margin, that's going to raise the interest rate from the base interest rate. It's going to raise it 2.75% and margin, not actual percentages, but in margin. And that is how we're going to make the 275, right? The 2.75% of the loan amount is commission. So yes, they both come into play, right? We're always based on the loan amount. So the amount we're getting paid on is also always based on the loan amount. That's always the number it's based on. But then yes, you could charge less and make less, right? So if you charge your client less than 275 basis points margin, then they could get a little bit better interest rate and you would make a little bit less money. If you charge your client more than 275 basis points margin, then you could make a little bit more money, right? But the industry standard is 275. The reason why the industry standard is 275 basis points is because brokers, which make up the majority of loan officers, mortgage brokers, that's the most they can charge is 275, right? That's where it's capped at. So again, as realtors get 3% of the purchase price, loan officers 2.75% of the loan amount, and that is the top of the amount that they're able to charge legally. So that's why it's become the industry standard, right? You can't charge over that. Now, if you want to charge under that to try to win a deal, that's something that's up to you and your company, and also like your coaches and trainers, people teaching you, because you don't want to devalue yourself and you don't want to run around and do loans for super skinny margin where you're making barely nothing because you're lowering your price to try to win deals constantly, right? So it's based on both technically, but the actual amount that we're talking about is always the loan amount as opposed to the purchase amount. Okay, let's see here. Question. James is asking, can new loan officers make good money in their first year? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a loan officer that was on my team a while back that came on board, no experience as a loan officer, and he had no leads of his own, and we were giving him leads at the time. And he came on board. He did $5 million in his first 3 months. So in his first 90 days, he did $5 million in production, which is insane. I mean, he made like $60,000. I forget the exact amount, but he made more money. And he had told us, he said, I made more money in this first 3 months than I made last year at my old job. Right? He made whatever, 50-something thousand at his old job. In his first 3 months as a loan officer, he had made 60-something thousand, and he was off to the races. And one of that was from a repeat client, a lead that we had given him that was a repeat client. And the guy kept buying stuff from him after that as well. Not buying stuff, but kept doing loans through him after that as well. So yes, absolutely, you can be brand new. The question is, are you going to do the work, right? That guy came in, he started taking leads, he called them, he followed up. And the greatest part of the story, you couldn't even make this up. I couldn't make up a better example. The best part about that story is that the guy who gave him most of the deals that made up that $5 million, that repeat client, he called that guy 7 times before he answered. And on the 7th time, it was a lead that we gave him, and he kept following up with him. The guy didn't answer. On the 7th time, the guy answered, and he said, hey, you know what? Another lender just fell through today on one of my properties, so I'll give you a shot. And boom, turned into multi-million dollars in loans. That helped him hit 5 million in the first 3 months. That put, 60, 70,000 or whatever in his pocket in 3 months. And he was off to the races on becoming a full-time loan officer. So yes, it's possible. Now, is it easy? No, of course not. It takes time to build your pipeline, takes time to get going, but it's just a matter of how much work are you willing to put in. And he really not only put in the work, but he put in the hard work, right? Following up. How many people are going to call somebody 7 times? There's 99% of loan officers would not made the 3rd call, 4th call, 5th call, 6th call, or 7th call, right? And if he had stopped at 6 calls, he'd have 60 grand less in his pocket, or 50 grand less, or whatever it would have worked out to be the amount of business he did with that gentleman if he had stopped at 6 calls. So that's just an amazing story. It's almost too good to be true. I couldn't make that up as a like a training story, right? Of what you should be doing in your first 3 months. And what he was doing was he was calling leads, and he was following up with people. And again, 7th time he called the gentleman, and it's a great point to just plant that seed to think about. What if he had stopped at 6? What if he had stopped at 6 follow-up calls and he hadn't called that guy that day? I mean, we're talking about a difference of, $50,000 commission in this guy's pocket because he decided to make that call, that 7th call, which is, just an amazing story. Okay, question here from Alyssa. Do loan officers receive a salary, or are they strictly commission? Well, they could. I mean, if you're working at like a very large lender, then they could pay you salary. And then, of course, they pay you basically no commission. And so you're doing loans where you would make $20,000 off if you were commission only, but you'll get like a $200 bonus maybe or something because you're on a $30,000 salary or something. That would be at like a bank or a credit union or a very large lender sometimes, right? But those positions are hard to get because it's a guaranteed salary. And again, it's really not worth it, right? If you're in the mortgage business, you're in it for commissions. You're in it to make a lot of money. It's not an easy business. So if you're in this business, you're in it to make a lot of money, and getting paid salary somewhere and some tiny little scraps of commission when you close a deal, that's not going to make you the kind of money that you probably want to make. If you want to be making multiple 6 figures, it's impossible to do that with a salary, but it's very possible to do that when you're an actual loan officer that's, commission only like the rest of us. Okay, question here from Chris. How many loans per month does a typical loan officer close? It really varies, right? The ones that are up and running have a big pipeline, have been doing business with people for a long time, have a lot of realtor relationships to refer them deals. They're typically going to do maybe 5 or 10. And then you have people that just started in the business that are going to do 0. And you have people right in the middle that are trying to build up their business and make it work. And they're usually trying to be like at about 2, right? Like 2 loans a month is what most companies would consider like a full-time loan officer. Like if you're actually being a full-time loan officer, 2 loans a month, you should be closing bare minimum. Okay, we'll take a couple more questions here. So Ray is asking, what separates the highest earning loan officers from everyone else? I would say what separates the highest earning loan officers from everyone else is obviously just the work, the amount of work that they're putting in, and really the relationships and the referrals. So the loan officers who are inevitably going to make the most money are the ones that are getting the most referrals, right? Because referrals are the easy business, not easy, but easier than leads and stuff like that. And so typically that means people who've been in business for a while and also have a lot of realtor relationships. The realtor relationships referring you deals. If you have if you have strong relationships with a few top realtors, you're going to be a top loan officer because the top realtors are sending you so many referrals that you become a top loan officer. So obviously time and relationships and pipeline is what's going to separate the top producing loan officers from the rest. All right, last question here. Is it possible to make 6 figures as a loan officer? Yes, absolutely. I mean, you should be making 6 figures. If you're a loan officer, you should be making 6 figures. If you're not, then there's a problem, right? Now, it's not going to happen in the first 6 months. But again, the gentleman I just said made 50, 60, 70,000 in his first 3 months, in his first 90 days. So it's possible to do it in your first 6 months, but yes, in your first year, by the end of the year, you should be putting up those numbers. You should be making 10,000 plus a month. There's no reason why, especially when on a team like ours, where you're making 2.2% of the loan amount in commission. I mean, again, just $1 million in loans closed that month, and you're making $22,000. So that shouldn't be an issue at all to make 6 figures as a loan officer. The real question is, are you going to actually do it full time so that you can get there? And then are you going to really take it to the next level once you're there and really commit to it 1,000%, be all the way in and go above and beyond to build more realtor relationships and all this stuff? And that's how you're going to snowball into multi six figure a year income or 7-figure a year income. All right. Well, with that being said, let's go ahead and wrap it up. So remember, newmlo.com. If you want to join our team, if you're already licensed, you can join our team. We give you leads. We got the best rates out there, the best pricing, the most programs, over 300 different lenders we can broker loans to. And we're also a correspondent lender as well. And, top of the industry compensation. So if you're already licensed, you can go to newmlo.com to join our team if you want to make a change and start boosting your career there. And if you're not licensed yet, go to newmlo.com. You can actually get your license there, and we will walk you through all of the next steps, and we will bring you on board. So if you're already licensed, you can sign up and join. If you're not licensed yet, you can go to newmlo.com, and we'll help you get your license and bring you on board. So thank you, everyone.